Welcome to the Diversity and Inclusion On Air podcast. This podcast is a program of the Association of American Veterinary Medical Colleges Diversity Matters Initiative. This podcast explores various issues related to diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession and provides the AAVMC an opportunity Sorry about that. I was getting feedback. So this podcast explores various issues related to diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession and provides the AAVMC an opportunity to offer ongoing diversity programming to our member institutions, as well as all veterinary professionals. My name is Lisa Greenhill, and I'm the Senior Director for Institutional Research and Diversity at the Association of American Veterinary Medical Colleges. So I'm very excited today, Tuesday, May 2nd. Today's show is on diversity and research and veterinary research. I am really excited about my three guests today. We have Ms. Evymarie Prado from Virginia Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine, Dr. Garry Adams from Texas A&M University, and Dr. Tiffany Lyle from Purdue University in Indiana. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So as is our custom, before we dive into our topic, I'm going to ask each of you to give us a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to this moment in veterinary medicine and your interest in veterinary research. So Evymarie, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so my name is Evymarie Prado-Sanchez. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I'm a second year at the Virginia Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine here in Blacksburg, Virginia. I am what we call the public corporate tracker. So I am interested in government and research medicine. And currently I am taking classes on epidemiology and doing research on brucellosis.
Oh, great. Awesome. So brucellosis, Dr. Adams, why don't you go next? Because I know that's kind of right up your alley, isn't it?
Yes, that's a great subject. Hi, my name is Garry Adams. I'm a professor here at Texas A&M University. And my interest in research began actually while I was working with the veterinarian before I ever entered veterinary school. He was conducting research on cancer in the eye of cattle. So I became interested in that. Then as I was a veterinary student, I also had the opportunity to do research, and that further gave me a lot of interest to pursue research as a career. So I've done that, and that's really been interesting. I'm still engaged in research and still enjoy it.
All right. Dr. Adams also did not mention that he's the former Dean of Associate Dean of Research at Texas A&M. So gotta give that a shout out there.
Well, it was administration, which I worked in administration, really enjoyed that. I'd have to say, as much as I enjoyed that, I still like the research on the bench and working with students, graduate students, and veterinary students the most. That's still the most fun.
Awesome. So well, welcome. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Lyle.
Right.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am an assistant professor of veterinary pathology here at Purdue University. And just to give you a little bit about my pathway here, Atlanta and Indianapolis are actually both home for me, but I went to vet school and undergrad at the University of Georgia. And I got into research actually as an undergrad. I joined a research lab actually as a freshman in undergrad, looking at yeast mating pathways, actually in a biochemistry lab, and had a great mentor there who really fostered my passion of veterinary medicine and helped me to link up with others in the vet school there. I was able to continue doing research as a veterinary student and really got engaged in pathology due to the, again, great mentors I had in the pathology department. And then from vet school at UGA, I went on to do a residency in anatomic pathology at Purdue, where actually I became very interested in metastasis and the way that the metastatic niche occurs and the different environments and that cancer cells actually grow in different tumors. So from my residency, I did my PhD in collaboration with the National Cancer Institute in the Comparative Biomedical Scientist Training Program, which is a graduate partnership program with Purdue and the NCI. And while I was there, I studied changes to the blood-brain barrier, and the blood-brain barrier protects the brain, protects it from any sort of negative molecules in circulation, and how it's changed in metastasis from cancer. So from that lab and my research there, I was still maintaining my interest in the blood-brain barrier and those changes. And now in my position at Purdue, I lead a lab focused on changes to the blood-brain barrier, focused on many different cancers, but right now we're looking at changes in lung cancer.
Very, very cool. So I'm really excited to have the three of you kind of looking at this kind of pipeline of diversity and research, and kind of thinking about all of these different kinds of steps. So to kind of frame our conversation a bit for today, I was taking a look at some of our data that we collect on research faculty. So one of the interesting things that I noted was that in the last 5 years or so, we've seen this particular group of faculty, our research, non-clinical track research faculty, has grown by about 6%. You know, it's really interesting because the number of women in this particular area is growing. Right now, we have kind of relative gender parity among the research faculty across all of the U.S. institutions. And the growth of women in research among research faculty is second only to the growth that we're seeing among administrators. So that's kind of cool with the gender piece, right? But what we also are seeing is that the percentage of racially and ethnically underrepresented faculty on the research track, it has dropped pretty dramatically in the last 5 years or so. At one point, we were just under 25%, and now we're at about 15%. It's unclear really why that might be the case, so we can talk about some of the reasons why. Is it that faculty are kind of moving on outside of academia? Are there less funds? What's kind of really happening with our racial and ethnic diversity with respect to research track faculty within veterinary medicine? So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit, though, about kind of what got you hooked. And so, Tiffany, you talked a little bit about your interest in metastasis and then this blood-brain barrier and lung cancer and all of these kinds of things, but really kind of when was the moment that you knew you wanted to do research? Was there like a moment where you said, yeah, this is my thing?
You know, it was truly, really gradual. So I actually fought it a lot, actually. While I was in undergrad and also in vet school, I still often found myself in various research environments. But the thing that I really learned, again, through mentorship, was how to ask scientific questions. So I think that that's often a barrier in a research environment, because research is challenging. But the thing that you have to learn how to do is to really ask questions to, number one, interpret the data that you've produced, and two, to push your research down further into the next step, so that you're not just bogged down in the, well, this experiment didn't work. But well, why didn't it work, and what does it mean that it didn't work? I mean, so negative data shouldn't necessarily always be trash, and shouldn't always be, said that, well, I'm not good at this. I think that developing that skill of asking scientific questions is really critical, and that takes time, and it certainly takes encouragement in the research environment. And I was thankful to, again, have had that in vet school and also in my residency and PhD. I was just always engaged in a research question, even in the diagnostic setting. I was always engaged in looking at my whatever situation I was in from a research approach, which made it really natural for me to enter into where I am now.
All right, so we have this kind of evolution. So Garry, was it also an evolution, or did you have an aha moment?
Oh, yeah, sure. Actually, I began the research while I was in high school, because where I grew up in the western part of Texas, right on the border with Mexico, I actually grew up as a minority in my high school. I worked with a scientist there who was engaged with toxic plants. In our part of the state, it's a desert, and animals eat toxic plants and they become very ill. So I collaborated with him while I was in high school, and then with Dr. Edwards to do my practical part of working in veterinary medicine on ocular squamous cell carcinoma. Our collaboration actually was with MD Anderson in Houston. And so we had scientists there that we worked with. So I followed that through all the way into the College of Veterinary Medicine here. And I would say when I encountered veterinary pathology, I was hooked. We had a fantastic instructor at that time who was just a spellbinding teacher. And so I knew then that I wanted to go ahead and study veterinary pathology. That was a turning moment for me. So I did. I finished my veterinary degree, then did my PhD and my board certification, passed my boards. But all during that, like Tiffany, I was doing research at every one of those steps. While I was a veterinary student, I worked in several labs. Then I was able to do research, of course, on my PhD. And then even while I was doing anatomic pathology and passing the board certification in the American College of Veterinary Pathologists, I was also conducting research and publishing papers. And so that's followed through the rest of my career. I was always interested in vector-borne diseases. So I spent about 10 years both in South America and in Africa, Europe, and Canada in my career, and worked with a lot of pathogens in different areas like we do now. So every time I worked in one of those different places in the world, I always interacted with students locally that were really, really bright and that came from various cultures and backgrounds and languages and religious settings as well. And all of that, to me, integrated in my laboratory as I established my own laboratory over the years. This is my 50th year on the faculty, and I've been in research the whole time. I've always wanted a highly integrated laboratory from multiple cultures, multiple national areas, so that we would have thinking that was different to focus on the hypothesis that we were testing. And as Tiffany stated, the first thing is to generate a really testable hypothesis that's approachable in funds, reagents, supplies, equipment, etc., to be able to approach the problem. So a lot of my work was driven by the understanding of the host pathogen interface. As I looked at the tissues and did diagnostic pathology, how did this occur? It's like Tiffany's question about metastasis of neoplasms. How did this occur? Because these lesions, while they might not sound very interesting to anyone else, to me are magnificent portrayals of how the host is responding to whatever the challenge is. In my case, pathogens such as Brucella, tuberculosis, and salmonellosis, and so on. So that is sort of my story. I've never lost that interest. I'm in the laboratory today. I'm still in my office after 50 years. I still like this interaction with research. I can't give it up. Although my wife, Jerry, and whom Lisa knows, sometimes I think she'd like for me to talk a little more things there. But I can't give this up. I'm still spellbound by pursuing a hypothesis, either myself or with my students. I've had about 60 PhDs in my laboratory over the years. And if there's any legacy in my career, it will be the students, my graduate students, who finished. And so I can't give this up. I'm still, from my high school days, working with toxic plants in sheep and in goats till now, working with pathogens. I'm just as entranced at this time as I was then. That was a long story. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. No, it's great. So, Evie, so I have to tell I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. I have to tell a little story about Evie. So last fall, I was at the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science meeting. And lo and behold, this young woman kind of comes up to me very excitedly and saying, "Oh my goodness, the veterinarians are here." Of course, everyone knows I'm not a veterinarian. I just kind of play one on the podcast, right? And so out of 4,000 plus attendees at this meeting for individuals of Hispanic and Indigenous individuals in the U.S. that are really kind of focused on STEM disciplines, there was one veterinary student, just one, giving a poster presentation on her project from her Summer Scholars session last summer, and it was Evymarie. So as I was telling our guests earlier, we've been besties ever since. And so I was really excited to have her participate. So Evy, did you know in advance? I know that you mentioned earlier that you're in the dual degree program. Did you mention in advance? Did you know in advance that you wanted to do research? Or is this your plan? Or did you have an aha moment? Did somebody have an aha moment?
So I guess I'm the black sheep in this case. So I did have an aha moment. I was lucky enough to participate in like summer semester programs for research when they were trying to introduce students to research in high school. But none of the research projects had to do with veterinary medicine. So I was doing them because I didn't want to be home on a Saturday. So I was like, okay, I'll try this route. And I think when I got into my undergrad in the University of Puerto Rico, I looked at my professors, and none of my professors were also veterinarians. They were all animal scientists. So I was like, well, if I want to find a place for a possible veterinary student, I might as well talk to them. I talked to one of my professors that did research in genetics. They were trying to map the genome of endangered species. And I was like, can I just join your lab and see what is this all about? And he was like, sure. And that led to many other things. And it wasn't until I actually did research with a veterinarian PhD that I was like, oh my God, this is actually possible. Like, I can be a DVM and PhD. Like, this is a dream. And I knew from the get-go, I did not want to work in clinical medicine in the sense of like being with cats and dogs all the day. I knew that I needed to do something else. And when I discovered this person from Michigan State, Dr. Barry Olivier, I was like, oh my God, you're my idol. And I stuck to him like glue. And when I got to Virginia, Maryland, I thought that now veterinary medicine was going to take over and I wasn't going to be able to go and do research. And it wasn't the case. When I got accepted into the summer program, I saw that I could still do it and still be able to, take my clinical classes. And it's been going well ever since. I am a dual degree, but I'm not a PhD yet. I think I want to take a break after vet school, enough studying for 4 years, and then consider a PhD. But now that I'm in veterinary medicine, I just been able to discover all the other kind of little niches of research that I can apply myself to, and I'm looking into those right now.
Oh, great. So Garry, you have to hang around a few more years.
Oh, yeah, I'm not planning on recording anytime soon. Don't worry. We have a lot of work going on that we want to follow through on vaccines against brucellosis and Rift Valley fever, African swine fever, hog cholera. So we've got a lot of work going on. We're not going to stop. No.
So each of you have a common theme that you mentioned either at length or briefly, and that was the role of a mentor. And that is a really important piece in terms of thinking about exposing young people to careers in research, but also kind of helping to sustain them and to encourage them along the way. And so, I think that, Garry, with 60 PhD students, I think you have a lot of experience. And if 60 have come through the lab and completed, then it seems that you've got a good track record on this. So tell me, what is, what kinds of things do students and prospective students who are interested in careers in veterinary medicine need to know about kind of finding a mentor and kind of thinking about the importance of having diversity in mentors, but also kind of mentoring across diversity as well?
I think the main responsibility that we have as mentors is to help the student identify what their interest really is, because the work that we do is really about engagement for a lifetime. So whatever it is a student would like to do, help them discover that in an independent way to allow them to find the area they want to work in. One way to do that is to rotate through several laboratories if you have an opportunity. I would say at least 4 laboratories if the student has an opportunity, because the lab culture differs. It's variable from lab to lab. Find the area of interest, find a laboratory that fits your lifestyle and the way you want to work. Then find the area of work that you want to do, and then help. If you have a good mentor, that mentor will help you discover your own hypothesis. To be given the hypothesis is not the right way to pursue graduate work, master's or PhD level. So I feel like my main work is to assist the student to discover their own hypothesis. Once they own a hypothesis, it's part of their life, and they will pursue that hypothesis to the end. And that means writing grant proposals and publishing work and being a part of the whole program. Now, that's done in the context of the entire laboratory, the laboratory culture network. And in my laboratory, we work as a team, always. There's not an independent person in the corner of the lab doing their own thing. We will work as a team. And if we can't work as a team, and I tell this day one to my students as they come in, if you cannot work as a team member, you probably need to go to another laboratory where you can be comfortable. Because we will work as a team. We'll cut across several cultures, several backgrounds, several different kinds of thinking. And in the end, what I see after these years is a development of a network. Once they finish, they're all joined together in a network across the world, most of them having interactions with one another the rest of their lives and doing their own experiments. It's something that they discovered in the laboratory. So that's what I feel is my role as the chairman of the graduate committee or serving on other graduate committees, is to help the student discover what they really are interested in and then their own hypothesis. Then you can't keep them away from that. They will pursue that to the end. I think that's sort of the way that I've approached it with my students over the years.
Great.
The networking component is just so important, building the network within the lab, but also for students to understand that they can build a network in the community that they're already in as graduate students or as veterinary students, or even as undergrads. I mean, simply to go beyond the walls of their vet school or their lab to get to know what the other investigators are doing by simply attending seminars that may take in, again, these scientific questions, or just simply to know what other techniques others are using that may help your research. I mean, time and time again, I find myself just coming upon, another component of my network that really helps and influences my research. And I think also with the mentorship that I've learned, just reflecting back on my career and academics so far, is that there are different mentors that are helpful for different things. Of course, usually your primary mentor is, of course, helpful in designing that graduate thesis and how that component may work, but also in thinking about what your entire career may look like. I mean, getting feedback from multiple people is so critical. I found that so important for me, like I said, from my mentor beginning in undergraduate through where I am today as an early career academic. So I still have multiple mentors in that area. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Tiffany. So I think from a student's perspective, what I've seen is that I have been able to find all these different mentors, like you said, essentially by talking to them and having that research question in my head. And I think you can have another thing that I learned is like your mentor doesn't have to be a DVM PhD. I learned that. I had a mentor that was a computer engineering PhD. And the reason is because each of them do bring something different to the table. And as a student, in telling other students, I'll be like, just go talk to them. They won't bite you. They won't eat you. The lab won't close the door on you. If it's a BSL-2, make sure you wear your lab coat, but they will always be there. For me, it was more of, I started with this mentor for Michigan State, and now that I'm in vet school, I started looking for another mentor because I knew I was farther away. And I ended up finding another one that is a completely different field that now I'm interested in. I feel like we should emphasize the students the point of our labs, in case of both of your lab doctors are open. So if they really have those questions, they can just go search you out.
And one other thing I'd like to add is that one thing that veterinary students often take for granted is so much that they bring to the research table. Yes. And oftentimes it may not be intuitive, just because as a veterinary student, you're gaining so much knowledge so quickly that sometimes you need, someone else's input who's been in the field a lot longer than you have to kind of, give you some tips and hints on what you bring to the research table and how you can also get research moving forward quickly. And I think that that's also a really, really important part of mentorship and of retaining people in veterinary research, is for them to know what tools they're bringing to the research table.
Absolutely.
I think something I might just add, if I might, Lisa, is I could not agree more with Tiffany and Amy about the interaction and across wherever you're working to interact with others. I cannot enforce that anymore. Science today, at the level that it's done, is usually collaborative in nature. And one person cannot have all techniques, all possibilities, do all of the work. And so that very team-oriented approach of interaction across several areas is very important. In our school, we fortunately have a graduate student association, and they're highly active. They're solving problems themselves. And then there's a postdoc group as well. Postdoctorals, and so they're interacting at their own level, solving a lot of their own problems, never have to go and talk to their mentor, and they can move forward. They do not have to wait. So that interactive nature of science is very important today, more than it's ever been.
Great. Wonderful. So if you are viewing live, please feel free to drop me an email at diversitymatters@aavmc.org if you have a question or comment for our guest, or you can certainly leave a question or comment on the AAVMC Diversity and Inclusion on Air Facebook page, which I'm updating regularly during the show with great quotes and clips. I have to also take the host's liberty to say, yes, definitely network with people from all walks of research. Garry and I have had long, great conversations about what kind of research veterinary research is, kind of defining what the definition of research is with respect to veterinary medicine. But I also have to say that during my own graduate work, he was a wonderful mentor and encourager. So sometimes that mentor role, you have different folks for different things in your life, and he was always so encouraging of kind of having me bounce questions off of him, thinking through some of my own research questions, as well as just kind of giving me an attagirl on the days where I felt like I was clawing to the next chapter. So thank you publicly for all you did.
It was my great pleasure. I wish I had more students like you.
Well, thank you. I won't be doing that again, though. Once enough.
One time's needed.
Right. So, I mentioned that we've kind of seen, we're seeing a bit of gender parity among researchers. And I think that certainly part of that is because we have so many women coming into the profession now, right? And so we have this year, 81% of veterinary students are women in the United States. And so, we're going to continue to see women emerge in various areas, but we still are very much lacking when it comes to students of color and students from various racial and ethnic backgrounds. And we've seen such a dramatic decrease in the representation of people of color in research positions at the colleges. I'm not really sure kind of why. I'd be kind of curious to hear any thoughts or hypotheses, if you will, that I can go off and test on my own about why that might be. What's happening at the colleges where we're seeing such a decline?
I can say from a student's perspective, I think it goes to, the point mentioned by Dr. Garry is if we don't promote the generation that is right now on vet colleges to kind of show them that they are able to continue in a different career path, then that's when you start lacking, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I think I am grateful in my school that is a different type of curriculum and it is promoted in a certain way. But I do know of my other friends who are in other vet schools and they tell me, oh, it's really hard to do anything different because everything that I'm getting taught is small animal, large animal. I'm not getting taught anything outside the box. And I think something like as simple as a summer research program, which I'm pretty sure almost all vet schools have under the Mary Ellen and NIH grant, can really help the students, can help this generation to see all the different things that you can do with a DVM. And there's where you target your diversity. Like there's where you target your underrepresented minors and help them through. Getting into vet school is hard enough already, and there's not that many of us, but when they are, then I think schools should take advantage of that and be like, well, they are here. Let's see what they want and what they want to study and expose them. I think the more important thing is just exposing, and that's something that I know from other friends that some schools do not have.
And one thing I'd like to add, and I think it's the reality of our profession, is the weight of student loans. I think that the financial aspect in some ways can cause people to take a pause and say, I should go, and directly enter the workforce in one way or another. And because programs that do exist that help with loan repayment may not be as well advertised, or like the federally funded state program, if you're working in an academic institution that gives you 10 years to pay off your loans, to pay off a 30-year loan, which is extremely effective. The NIH loan repayment program, which will probably be in state at least as long as the budget's intact. So, I mean, there are certain pathways that exist, but I don't think that they're as well known as much as the weight of, oh no, I have $100,000 in student loans that I need to pay off.
Sure. I think that the other thing, I mean, it takes a long time to create faculty. It takes a long time to create one, right? And so how many really are in the pipeline, and do those individuals really actually intend on staying in academia? Certainly, DVM PhDs are highly sought after. Certainly, there's corporate opportunities for them in R&D and certainly other opportunities. So we're talking about a relatively small pipeline, and with a pretty long kind of creation lifespan. Garry, any thoughts?
Yes, a couple of thoughts, and I wanted to agree with Evie. In particular, I think that's a very astute observation that she's made, that the encouragement needs to occur early. And that's undergraduate. But after they get into the professional programs, to me, the most stimulating and inspiring instructors and faculty are those who have some research going on. And they will mention some of in my case, and in our faculty here, we try to have faculty who have some interaction with research can say, okay, we're going to discuss the anatomy of the eye today, and they have some relation with research that they're doing. I think there's nothing like that for the student to see. Basic science is really the foundation of where we start. However, there's application for what you're learning, and you can also do discovery science if you're inspired to do that, and provide opportunities and encouragement. I think that just as she's wisely pointed out, that's where we began to bring in all persons, no matter what their background is, to have them enter the stream for academic research, not only for academic research, but also in private enterprise and in other parts and other avenues for veterinarians. One of the things that we're doing, I hope, is to expand the spectrum of activities that veterinarians can do worldwide in many activities, including research. In my case, I'm highly biased toward research. I don't deny that a bit. That's what I'm about, and that's why I think the future of our profession, to a large degree, depends on our creativity and discovery science for the next generation of products and devices and approaches and understanding host pathogen and the environment and how these interact. And I think this has to begin early. That's where the inspiration begins. And Lisa, as you pointed out, this is a long process. But to me, the whole process is still interesting. And the students that I work with, it's about discovering their interest. And once they have that, they will go on and be productive members, even if they return to practice. I read biopsies for a long time as an anatomic veterinary pathologist. And what I found, those who had an inclination toward research began to research in their own clinics. I mean, we would write a paper based on cases that were coming in. And so the interest was there. And I think that's a sort of role that we can play as veterinarians, even in small animal, large animal practice, wherever we're working. The ability to engage in research and discovery, I think, is innate in us. I hope we're teaching that, and I hope we're inculcating that and inspiring that.
Absolutely. That's so important. I really emphasize to the veterinary students that even if they do go into practice, that they're still doing research when they're looking at one surgical technique versus another and looking at different, the healing process and the two different techniques. That is a research question that you're asking, and the data that you're procuring when at each appointment as the patients come back in. That's so important to for them to approach it in that way, so that they are then making the best decision on which procedure is the one to use in the future.
I think it's also important to let them know, I've seen it in different schools that I've tend to, is that even clinical trials, they're essentially research. There's a research question that we're trying to answer. And even though you're a DVM, you're doing this investigation, most of the DVMs don't have a PhD when they do these clinical trials, and they're trying to look into a question using clinical medicine data or evidence-based medicine. And I've seen how there's this stigma around research, and I get this question sometimes. They're like, "Oh, are you stuck in the lab all day?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not." Granted, I'm working with brucellosis, but that's different. But I know of people in my class that are also interested in research, and they are going to the hospital and they're taking samples. Part of my MPH project will deal with methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, so I have to go to the hospital and get samples from animals. So it's essentially, as long as you have a hypothesis and you're answering that question, you are doing research. And I think it's vital to let veterinary students know that you do have faculty that do these clinical trials, and again, just go and talk to them, see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. So Evie, I want to ask you, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I mentioned that we met at the SACNAS convention last year. How did you come to be the only vet student in a group of 4,000 STEM students and faculty and researchers, doing a poster presentation on your summer project?
So I learned about SACNAS when I was an undergrad through my non-veterinary advisor, Naida. She's a computer engineer. So she told me about SACNAS and she said, you're STEM, you're science, you can go to this conference. And I was like, okay, sure. So I went to the first one in San Antonio, and I remember, I don't know if it was you, Lisa, but I remember meeting some people from the AVMC, and I met some people from the AVMA, and I was like, well, I want to do veterinary medicine, but I also want to do research. Can I do both? And they told me, yes, you can. And to make the long story short, I got into vet school, and when I did the summer research program for Virginia, Maryland, they sent us to the conference for Marielle. And I was like, I asked my mentor, can I go to another conference? And he was like, sure. I mean, I will be out behind you 100%. And Dr. Ansar Ahmed here in Virginia, Maryland, he told me, well, go for it and see what happens. And I applied to SACNAS because I wanted to come back to SACNAS because I knew that I had people when I went there that served as an inspiration. And I was like, maybe if I go back, I may be able to do something. And I applied, was fortunate enough to get the grant for the travel, and went to California. I've never been to the East Coast. The 4 hours was very confusing to me.
West Coast.
West Coast, sorry. So going to the West Coast and all that. And I decided to show off my research because the thing is, I see how we, and I think that's a fault of how we do research these days. It's like we try to make these conferences more and more and more concentrated to a specific topic. Like I could have gone to a microbiology conference, but why go to a conference that is so focused instead of going to a global one when you can see all the different exposures in science, technology, engineering, and math? And that's what I decided to just, I'll go to a global one. And I went to SACNAS. I did not know that I was the only vet student presenting. I thought more people were going to go. But it definitely made my school like, they were like up in the air because they were like, oh my gosh, she's the only student. She's from our school. And they were really excited. And Dr. Ansar Ahmed and Dr. Caswell, my mentor, they were really excited as well. But I think I noticed how much of that conference made a difference in me before I started applying to vet school. And I thought that why not go back and maybe do the same? Hopefully somebody will be in my shoes at that point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yes, I took lots of pictures. I think some of those are certainly back on the Facebook page. I was shameless in terms of sending them immediately to the dean, like from my phone while I was there, shameless. And so it was really great. And it was also really great to kind of see a summer program kind of come full circle within a year, right? So you kind of have this project that a student worked on during the summer. They go to the symposium. That's great. But then they actually apply to present that at another meeting. And it was just a really wonderful opportunity to see a student, a veterinary student, kind of taking yet this next step. The other thing that I kind of want to mention about SACNAS is if you've ever wondered whether or not a veterinary meeting, a hard science STEM research meeting can have be culturally relevant and culturally nuanced, this is the meeting to go to. It's really phenomenal the way that they have the meeting and the way that they set it up, some of the additional activities that kind of wrap around a lot of the research sessions. So yeah, if you've ever wondered whether or not this kind of diversity conversations and culture conversations can happen with research at the bench, this is the meeting that you need to go to because they'll tell you all about how to do it. It's a really, really such a wonderful thing. AVMC maintains a presence there as well as AVMA. So there's another shameless plug. So, Tiffany, I want to ask you a little bit as a pretty early career faculty member, a woman of color. One of the things that we talk about or we see in the literature around young faculty, particularly underrepresented faculty, is having how do we prevent those individuals from paying what we call the diversity tax? Meaning, so you're going to be now on the women's research grant. Now you're going to go to the diversity committee on Thursdays for the college, and then the diversity committee for your department, and then the diversity committee for the university. And then you're going to be on this other community thing over for the community that we're going to do with the extension office. How do we protect young faculty from being overextended and making sure that they're set up to be successful?
Sure. So I've been in my position for a little over a year, actually, I think 13 months as of yesterday. And, so my situation is really, really positive, on the more positive end, in that I am fortunate enough to, and our dean is Willie Reed, who fosters an really, truly positive environment that truly contributes to excellence. The other side of that is that our university is located in northwestern Indiana, and most people, they think of, why would anybody live in northwestern Indiana? It's actually a very lovely place to live. But beyond that, I have found on my own, I haven't really experienced anything negative as far as being pulled in too many directions. But one thing that I've done on my own, and I did this intentionally, was again to expand my network, and that was even beyond science, even reaching out to other URM faculty members in the College of Liberal Arts, and also in computer science. And I met them at different events that I had attended on campus, just so I could understand how they kind of navigated the landscape. And when I say navigate the landscape, I mean that, so we are in northwestern Indiana, so we have students that come from all over this country, from all over the world for that matter, and particularly our African-American women may sometimes feel isolated, quite frankly, at Purdue, and they're just seeking out someone that wants to understand them, and that can be, when you have 5 or 10 students knocking at your door, that's another, while important, there's certainly a time element. So there is kind of a network on campus that we kind of manage the mentorship of these students together, so that nobody has 10 students and somebody has 1, if they need that help beyond what's available in their department. So I think it again comes back to expanding the network. One other resource that I found useful is a website actually called the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. It's kind of an online community of people from underrepresented backgrounds or not. It's just another environment to kind of think about other issues as they may arise. Again, I haven't dealt with any specific yet, but just kind of for me to be aware of that others may be dealing with, and also for me to think about problem solving if they were to arise in the future.
All right. Great. That's the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, right?
Yes.
All right, great. So, so we have a question from Facebook. And so the question is, are there now active recruitment efforts that focus on retaining those faculty members that do come through? So, Tiffany, you just kind of touched on this a little bit, but are there are there kind of retention efforts? And so, Garry, I'm going to ask for you to maybe weigh in. What kinds of things is Texas A&M doing to kind of retain, young or mid-career research faculty?
Absolutely, that's a key to the future of the faculty, is the young faculty coming in to replace people like me when that time comes. I mean, this is a reality and we need to deal with this. So yes, retention of young faculty. It's not just money though. It's the environment and the culture, and I would say the feeling a sense of wanted and needed and appreciated that makes retention, I think, function, in my opinion. And I think Tiffany mentioned, when we read there, knowing well, creating that environment for retention and the nurturing and the saying that we want you to stay, we need you, we appreciate what you do, is just as important as some sort of retention package with regard to funds, funding and salaries. That's important, of course, but those two go together. Our faculty and fortunately our dean and our upper level administration now are very active in retention packages for all faculty, and including, of course, underrepresented individuals. So yes, that's an important part for the future of our profession at all levels. I think a question you asked, Tiffany, is an important one where Lisa mentioned going on and on and on about the responsibilities that you might have as a new faculty, given your personal culture. And that can happen when you're overburdened with all 6 layers of chairmen of committees, serving on committees, and all of those are important, every one of them. And I'm sure you're driven to do those. On the other hand, science and academia, the currency is publication. Really what we do is based on our publication. So balancing that balance of the activities that you have in retaining, encouraging, uplifting, networking with underrepresented individuals across the faculty is important. But you personally need to balance all of those with the currency of academia, and that's your publications. And of course, that's driven by the kind of grants that you write and the funding. You know all of this. But I think for those who are listening, who are thinking about a career, Avy is one of those who's, I think, well on the trajectory to develop a long-time career. You have to balance your life with what's going on in science, with what's going on in your faculty. Those need to come together so you can have fulfillment, enjoy, and like what you do. It's not a job. It's what you do, and you're inspired by that. I may be off subject here, but I think that balance is critical for long-term productivity and a sense of enjoyment with what you do and your commitment, whatever that happens to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually think that that's a really important point, kind of that work-life balance and just kind of life balance and loving what you do, but also making sure that you have a life to live. And, this is something I think key as well for the veterinary community. As we know, wellness is a challenge for the community. And certainly there are some additional risk factors there. And so we need to be mindful about trying to find ways of seeking balance and practicing some self-care and kind of how do you do it all? Right? How do you do it all and continue to enjoy yourself? So we are coming to the close of our show. We've just got a few minutes left, so I have a couple of questions left. But the big thing that I want to know, Evie, what would you, as a second-year student, dual degree, I'm hoping to see you at SACNAS again this fall. What advice would you give to your student colleagues, as well as those newbies, those first years that are going to be landing at the doorstep in just a few months? They've just signed, they've just said, this is where I'm going. April 15th just passed. They're all excited. Yay. They haven't yet been hit with just, they may have read the sticker prize, but they're not quite depressed about it just yet. So what? So what advice would you give them in terms of thinking about exposures to research careers and some of your experiences?
I think, and I'm a student ambassador here at my school, so I kind of talked about this with some of the younger ones. I definitely told them, and this is an advice that I also use is when you get to vet school, you're already in. So you know that this is what you're going to do. And I think you should, from the get-go, start seeing what your professors are doing or what is different from the faculty that you guys have in each school. And the reason for that is because I feel like on first year, you just get thrown all this information, anatomy, physiology, everything that they can throw at you essentially. But it's important to kind of find where is it that you want to go or have an idea what you're going to do. I've heard from many of my classmates that they're like, oh, I didn't know. I just wanted to go to vet school, but I don't know what I want to do. But if you are active when you get here, you definitely will find what you're looking for or what you're interested in. Interest, I think that's very important. Follow every single interest that you have to the point where you notice, is this for me or not? Because I got here and I was like, well, I'm going to be a public corporate veterinarian, and I am that in my tracking system. But I was like, well, where do I fit research in? And I started looking at opportunities, and just we have an amazing technology and amazing Google that they call it. And you can just Google opportunities, summer opportunities in research. And there's other opportunities at other veterinarian schools that you're able to take upon. And I definitely do encourage people to visit conferences. I feel like conferences were the thing that made me kind of find what I wanted to do. And I met other people and I networked in those conferences. And SACNAS, for example, I've gone to SAFMA as well. And I was able to meet different people from different backgrounds. And I think those are relatively good experiences. And don't be discouraged. Vet school is hard. I cannot emphasize it enough. But it is doable. And I'm a dual degree. I'm seeing the TAC prize at the end of the tunnel, but I'm saying that TAC prize will be worth it if I get to do what I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great.
It's so important what she said about, thinking how, you may not know what you want to do as a veterinary student. And, it's very normal to come to vet school and, want to do equine medicine one day and camelid medicine the next. Because we have a very exciting field, but make sure you take advantage of the opportunities that are around you.
Indeed.
I would add
So,
something.
Dr. Adams, yeah.
Abby's points of view there, which are all good. One thing I wouldn't forget to do is, and this sounds really simple, don't forget to study, because you will need to have academic credentials for whichever direction you want to go in science. You will need to have those that documentation that illustrates that, yes, you can be a good student. At the same time, though, something you pointed out, Evie and Tiffany, both of you, is go and seek those opportunities. Do not hesitate. Ask your faculty, your professors, do you have something I can do? May I work in your laboratory? Seek those opportunities, and above all, apply for the Summer Veterinary Student Research Program in your institution. You will have a wonderful opportunity to cross-link across your own campus and across the world, essentially.
I think.
Yes, don't forget that one.
Yeah, and also be persistent. I do want to say this because I've had it so many times. Be very persistent in the sense of, like, if they don't answer your emails, don't feel bad. I get so many emails as a student, and it's incredible that I'm able to keep up with them. But if you have that faculty inside your building, then go stop by their office. They're probably in there. But don't get, I think the one thing I tell my friends and I tell all the young ones, do not get discouraged if they don't answer your email back, because you have no idea how many emails. I've seen how many Lisa's is emails, and I do not want to be in that position. And I have, like, here at my school, like, I do send emails, but I happen to always pop out and into my mentor from the MPH. I pop in her office, be like, hi, I had a question for you. Because they know they're here. Like all these professors, it doesn't matter what school it is, they're there for the students. They're there for you. So if you're a student, like, don't hesitate to go. Them, they won't eat you. But definitely do not get discouraged because they did not answer your email in 24 hours. Believe me, it's hard.
I'm gonna send that particular clip to my daughter, but yeah, this is really good advice. And as Evie has mentioned, our faculty apparently do not practice cannibalism. She's mentioned it a couple of times.
Not today.
Not today anyway. Go see them. Don't rely on just technology, but stop on by. So any other pearls of wisdom for the masses? Dr. Garry Adams, Tiffany Lyle, any other words of wisdom?
I think the future, you're creating your own future, your career. You're creating the future for the veterinary profession. So you are in charge of creating that future. The challenge is yours. I dare you to take that on and go for it.
Veterinary medicine is such an amazing field, and the fact that we bring so much to the research table, to research questions is really, I mean, I am just so excited about every day.
Awesome. Well, thank you each for spending the last hour with me and with everyone who's watching. I really appreciate it. I look forward to continuing the discussion on a future show, kind of continuing the discussion about diversity and research and veterinary research specifically. So thank you, each of you. It was fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So this has been another episode of Diversity and Inclusion on Air, sponsored by the AAVMC. Be sure to check out this episode and others on YouTube, our YouTube page, which is Diversity and Inclusion on Air on YouTube, as well as finding our audio versions of the show on your iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcast app you may be using. We are coming to the close of season 2 for the show. We have a few more surprises in store for the last couple of episodes, and then we'll be taking the summer off to prep for season 3. So thank you so much for another episode, and have a great evening.